One of the things I feel is super important is to allow everyone to express themselves exactly the way they do. And in doing so, you foster real human connections with the people that are on your team. I can't make all the decisions. My job's to help guide with borders, right? And allow my team to make decisions inside of that. So I have to foster them to be people that can make their own decisions. They shouldn't have to come to me. And when we came up with this little idea, it was just normal. I mean, we have plants in the office that have D&D sheets to them. They have stats and the whole
That's
nine
that's
yards.
that's Dungeons and Dragons for those that don't know. So
Yes.
D&D is short for Dungeons and Dragons
Thanks, Jeff.
for Elizabeth.
So for a second, we have a tendency to promote people that are the best at what they do, not necessarily the best leaders, right? And when you do that, you end up with a manager that is really good at the task they could do, but not necessarily good at telling others to do the task. And when you do that, that's how you create micromanagers. Like, well, you're not doing it my way, so I'm gonna tell you exactly how to do it every step of the way. I didn't hire people that don't know what they're doing. I hired people because we interviewed and I knew exactly what they did. So why would I ever think that I should tell them how to do their jobs? Just let them do their jobs. Let them answer their own questions, empower them to be what they're supposed to be, and the team will just run itself. Like,
Interesting.
And Tom, I think that's really common in businesses where you promote to middle management the person who is really good at doing their job when they're in that position. Do you find when you get a manager who's that micromanager, like you described, trying to make sure everyone's doing it the same way they were doing it, do you find them to be coachable, or are there ways to coach them into more of that secure leadership role where they're able to just give them the boundaries and let them run with it their way?
I think it comes down to how they were taught. A lot of people learn their styles of leadership based on who they have been led by in the past. So they know what they like and they know what they don't like. That doesn't mean they know how to apply those things. And I found that at least, okay, my grand scheme of the world, right? There's two types of leaders. There's ones that are kind of natural leaders, and you just have to teach them how to lead a group. And then there are people who want to lead, but they're not natural leaders. And in those ones, you really have to sit down and go through the basics. Like, they just may not understand the whole principle of a goodwill bucket. You can't be negative to an employee all the time. For every 10 good things you say, you can say one negative thing. So, and if you don't play that strategy right, you'll create an environment where they don't think they can do anything right. So, but natural born leaders kind of accidentally know that for some reason, and it's odd. So you have those two veins. So you can coach them depending on what they are, but again, I it's so crazy to me. I'll walk into a department that's like restructuring, and I'll ask this question because I think it's fun to ask. If the current leader isn't there, and you're all standing around in a room and something goes wrong, who would you look for to give the answer? And a lot of times the whole team will name one or two people that are the same names across the board. And it's not the ones being looked at for the management position.
Tom, a lot of your experience comes from the military, and I didn't have that experience. Elizabeth didn't have that experience. I mean, how has that shaped your view of leadership, and how would you kind of explain that to somebody that's a civilian or never had that experience?
So first off, the military taught me a lot of great things. They had a lot of different pieces. I'll use an example. So when you're on the way to leadership, or you are already a leader, a lot of times you got to like a leadership. I don't want to call it a confidence course because that's wrong, because I'm dumping on what it's actually called, but it's basically like a leadership course. There's a bunch of problems that have to be solved. Like, we have to get a squad from point A to point B. We have 2 planks, don't touch the water. You got to get across this like pool. And then you rotate who's in charge, and then you solve the problem and move across the area. And you start to build this like understanding that you're not the one. You may be the leader, but you don't have all the answers. And you need to listen to your team to get those answers to move forward. Those type of little interactions really, in the dining facilities, we call them DFACs. You go in there and you get your Thanksgiving meal. On Thanksgiving Day, all the generals, all the colonels are on the serving line serving all the privates their food, because the privates eat first, the generals eat last. And
I got chills. I literally just got chills just hearing that story.
So So when I come to the corporate world and, you know, I see an example like at another company where they have a competition for, like, they bring in their cars and show them off. And of course, the people with the highest money have the best cars. Why are they in this competition? Why are they any part of it? This is why are all the workers cooking food at a company sponsored barbecue, and all the C-suite is eating that food? Why is that's reversed to me? Because leaders lead from the front. You should be. There's a book called On the House by John Boehner, and he talks about how one of his lines from that book is, a leader without followers is just a guy walking down the street. So you have to support your team. You have to lead them, but they have to want to be with you, and you have to show that you're willing to roll up your sleeves and do the same thing that they're going to do. And the military taught me that. And in corporate world, I see a lot of do what I say, not as I do. And that breaks me. Like, I'm not good at that. My moral fiber falls apart, and my candid comes out, and I get asked to leave meeting rooms. So
what you're talking about with what the military taught you about leadership, and I think there's a common thought that military leadership is very authoritative leadership style, but what you're describing is very servant hearted leadership. And I imagine the military is very intentional about that. Why do you think being more servant hearted is important and when leading a team, whether it's military or civilian?
So I will caveat that, right? So it is very servant, but that's because but at the break point in a crisis mode, the leader has to be able to make those decisions, and the team has to be able to follow them. I think it's important to lead in a servant leadership style because you gain the trust of the people that work with you, the people that are in your charge, so that when it hits the fan, when you start making the calls, they move. But if you don't have that relationship, if you haven't built an actual relationship with the team through servant leadership, when you say take that hill, they're going to question it because they don't understand and they don't feel that you have their best interest in mind. So a new person's promoted, civilian, military, almost the same. They're almost one of two types. The first time that they're promoted to over top of people, they either come in like a hammer, they're way too hard, they shatter everything apart, or they come in way too soft and they get eaten alive. Normally, this auto corrects over a certain period of time. They get hemmed up in a review, an employee says some things about how their leadership style is that they didn't track, so they correct back towards that middle ground, or their team starts reporting them to like human resources about how horrible this boss is, and it corrects back towards the middle. So for the most part, they usually course corrects, but in the beginning, it's like one side or the other. And you should learn. Hopefully, you'd learned beforehand. You have a mentor, somebody who guides you into leadership. But let's be real, we are not really good at that. We promote people, and then we kind of let them flounder around, and we hope that they figure it out because, well, I promoted you, so you should know how to do this. The Army does a really good job of, when you get promoted, you go to courses to learn. There's a warrior leaders course, there's a senior leaders course, and each time you get promoted, I was enlisted, so the officers do a lot more, but each time you're promoted, you go to another course to learn another level of leadership. We don't do that very well in the corporate world. We promote somebody and we just kind of expect them to figure it out.
Leaders must be the most knowledgeable.
False. False.
Hard false.
Yes. It's a common misconception that the leaders have to have all the answers. Leaders don't have to have a single answer. They just have to be able to unite people that do have the answers.
Good.
Must take a lot of emotional intelligence to be able to pull that off.
I think you're right, Elizabeth. It does. Because in school, we're taught we always have to have the answer, right? Smartest kid in class has to have the answer. And it's like in leadership, no, I have to rally the right people, but it doesn't have to be me. So I found a really interesting post from you on social media. I think you took it out of a military textbook, and it said, you lead people and you manage things. Can you expand on that to maybe help us understand the difference between leadership and management?
Yeah. So as a good capstone on everything I've said so far, you don't tell everybody what to do. That's how you manage an item. That's what I do with my computer. I get on there and I tell it what I want to do for the day, and I give it all its tasks, and I lay everything out. But leadership's not that. You're not coming in with a task list and handing it off to every single person in your charge. That's not what leadership is. Leadership is coming in and making sure that they have the tools and you have cleared the path for them to do what they need to do to accomplish the task. That's what leadership is. Leadership is about making sure your people can do their jobs. You have cleared the path for them to do it. You are communicating for them, and you are making sure they have the right information to make the right decisions.